folks, welcome to Myers Metal Detectors, located in sunny Tampa, Florida, where we sell nothing but fun and adventures, treasure hunting gear, and anything you can imagine for metal detecting. Give us a call, 813-237-1939. Happy hunting and dig deeper.
Live from sunny Florida, it's Treasure Talk.
I got this one. You follow.
Welcome, folks. Welcome to another exciting edition of Treasure Talk.
It certainly will be.
All righty, friends. Well, let me go ahead and get started right away, of course. And as you know, today's show is brought to you by your friends at Myers Metal Detectors, where we sell fun and adventure. And of course, the views and thoughts and opinions expressed here by Treasure Talk guests and members belong solely to the guests and members and not necessarily to Phil Myers, Jocelyn Myers, Jeff Monin, or Myers Metal Detectors. And the purpose of Treasure Talk is to promote the hobby of treasure hunting and metal detecting and to educate our members in a fun, informative manner. And as you can see, Jeff and I have our hats on and our shirts on.
And our shirts.
Yes, so we have an exciting guest from Oklahoma, and we're going to talk with him here in a second.
That's right. If you hear us go, Oklahoma, where you won't hear it, but just in case you did, Anyways, we got, it was Santa Claus time today, let me tell you, because we got some special things today, didn't we, Philip?
Yes, we did. Oh, you want to say thank you first?
You betcha. You betcha.
Absolutely.
First of all, I'll show mine.
And I got mine here.
Got his. And then we got a really special one in the mail today.
Yes, I got mine too.
And this is very special from an extremely, extremely special person.
Yes,
Adele.
Thank you, Adele. That was an awesome, and that's all painted. So that's really
all
cool
handwork.
design.
I mean, that woman's got talent.
Yes.
That she hadn't even used yet.
Yes, extremely talented. Thank you, Adele. That was just awesome. And Merry Christmas, for sure.
And yes, Merry Christmas to you, Adele. Thank you so much. You are a great fan of the show and of the group, as well as the Blue Spade Society. You're a valued member there as well. And we just want to say thank you and Merry Christmas to you. Absolutely. So I think it's probably time to get on with stuff, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And before we get started, folks, I want to remind everybody that Jocelyn is on the Treasure Talk Facebook page. So if you're watching on another group, you can jump over there and ask questions, and I'll get those. And Jeff will get the ones from YouTube. So hopefully
I'm on all the Facebook groups. I got them all and the YouTube channels.
Awesome. So we won't miss any questions.
Nope. Awesome. Nope. We sure won't.
All right. Well, let's bring on our guest then, Jeff.
Okay, sounds good. You guys are in for a rare treat tonight. Steve from Steve's Detector Rods just makes fantastic products. Phil stocks them in the shop. If you are a member of the Blue Spade Society, then you've seen our picture of our poster boy, John David, with his electric blue Equinox shaft. He got that from Steve's Detector Rods. So Steve can do almost anything. He's willing to talk to anybody about anything, doing anything. If he can't do it, he'll tell you. So let's just go ahead and bring on Steve's Detector Rods and let's see what's shaking. There we go.
Hey guys.
Hey Steve, welcome to Treasure Talk.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
And we'll just jump right in and get started with the questions that we have for you. First off, tell us about your detecting career. How long have you been metal detecting?
Well, the first time I picked up a machine, I was probably about 12. My grandfather passed away in 1977, and a couple of years later, I was probably 11 or 12 and going through his stuff, and I found one of those, an old white Goldmaster, one of the old blue box machines in his stuff, and it was intriguing. I got it, took it out, and had no idea what I was doing. Didn't have a manual, didn't have anything for it, but found a couple of cool things in the backyard until the batteries ran out, and then I think it took 8D batteries or something like that, and I didn't I didn't have any money to afford to replace them, so it kind of died there for a little while after I ran the batteries out. But later on, then it's something that stuck with me. And later on, probably I'd say 20 years ago, I got an old bounty hunter machine and kind of started back into the hobby a little bit again. And then I really got serious about it about probably 11 years ago, 2010 or so. Got really interested, got back into it, and went through a number of machines. Found one that I really liked in the Minelab Explorer, and as a coin hunter, that was probably the first really good success that I started to have with as far as coin hunting, old coin hunting. But that's probably when I would say I really started, was back in 2010.
Okay, cool. So how did you get started making the detector shafts and the shovel handles, the scoop handles?
Well, the detector shafts was kind of it wasn't intentional. It was a case of where I mentioned I'd been using the Minelab Explorer, which I really liked the machine. And as you know, guys with Explorers, there's so many coil options that everybody wants to have a lower rod attached to the spare coils to make the swap outs quick. And so that's just kind of what I got used to. And as I got a couple of different Explorers over the years, the last one I had, the SE Pro, when it died, that was at the point where Minelab wasn't making parts for them anymore. And so it sort of forced my hand as far as, what am I going to do now? Do I want to find another used Explorer, or do I want to move up to a CTX? And in the end, I decided, being another FBS machine, I probably could move into a CTX and kind of carry over some of what I learned about the Explorer. So that's the direction I went, and got a machine, got the 3 coils. And of course, the next thing I wanted to do shortly thereafter was get a couple of lower rods. And when I saw what the price tag was on those lower rods, I thought, oh my goodness, that's another $300 to get another $350. So my thought was, wonder if I could do a DIY project, get some carbon fiber tubes, and maybe build a couple of lower rods for my machine. And so it was a challenge, and I got online, talked to some people, and one of the people that I'd spoke with at the time was Jeff Herkey, if you guys know who Jeff is. And makes arm cuffs and things like that for machines. He's been doing it for years, but he kind of helped me along with some ideas and some other folks. And eventually I was kind of just talking to people on the forum saying, here's where I'm at. I've got the tubes, et cetera, et cetera. When I got them finished, and I thought they turned out pretty well, I kind of went online and said, hey, I got them finished, and they turned out good. And a couple of people said, hey, can you make me one of those? And I said, yeah, I can make one. And it just kind of went from there. I just started making. I started out with the CTX lower rods, and then it just kind of expanded from there as people said, "Hey, can you build this? Can you do this?" And not too long after that, I got an Equinox, and so then I started thinking, "Geez, what could I do with an Equinox shaft?" Because it was the next challenge, and started with lower rods on that, and because there were no replacement lower rods at the time, Minelab had started coming out with coils at that point. The accessory coils, I think they came out the 6-inch first, and people were looking for lower rods, and there were none. So that's where I started. And then about 6 months later, I started working on a complete shaft. So that's just kind of where it went.
We got a question from the Mumbles Man off YouTube, as he wants to know, how long from start to finish does it take to complete a detector shaft?
That's a good question. Let me think about that, because there's a number of steps involved, and you kind of got to do things in pieces. I would say that probably, if you call me and you ask for one, unless I have one already built, it takes about 3 days. Usually I get one built in 3 or 4 hours, and then it takes some time for the epoxy to cure, and then I got to come back and put a few finishing touches on it, but put a few more things together. But the actual build time on a shaft is probably, if you added it all together, probably hour and a half of actual time where it's in my hand and I'm working on it.
But I think probably part of his question is from the time he ordered it until the time he'd receive it would probably be 7-8 days.
Yeah. Usually what I try to do is I try to have a couple of each style in stock, unless you want something that's custom or I have to actually build it from scratch. But I try to have a few of the varieties that are kind of standard in stock and already built, so that when somebody calls, I can usually turn it around in about 24 hours. And then it usually takes 3 or 4 days shipping to get it there. So yeah, about a week.
Well, that's still pretty good.
Oh, it's real good. And we do stock them in the shop. We just started stocking Steve's rod. And this is the Equinox one. And let's talk a little bit about the weight that you put on the end. If you guys can see this, I'm going to unscrew it. This is the Equinox shaft, and tell us why it's a good thing to have the counterweight it like that.
Well, if you guys think back, I mentioned earlier when I started jabbering about the old White's blue box machine. If you think back way back to the time when we had a lot of batteries and a lot of things like that, the control boxes on some machines that would be put towards the back end of the shaft, those components helped to counterbalance the machine. Even though the machines were much heavier, it helped to add some balance to the machine in some of those older units, and even up until recently, like a White's V3i or a CTX 3030 with the big battery at the end. Those components, although they're big and heavy, they do act as counterweighting to kind of balance out the machine. As we move though towards smaller batteries and lighter weight on the units, one of the things that has sort of happened as a result is all of the weight of the machine ends up at the coil, or the vast majority of it. And so what you have is a coil that sits clear out there at the end of that shaft, and it's acting, think of it in terms of like a teeter-totter on a playground. You've got weight on one end of a long, shaft. On the other end, which would be the butt end of the shaft, with the handle being the fulcrum, at the other end, there's no weight. The battery's in the handle. It's a very small lithium-ion battery, so there's not much weight at all at the butt end of the shaft. And what that does is it leads to an imbalanced shaft. Let me grab my Equinox here so I can kind of show people what I'm saying.
Yeah, and what I notice, with the 6-inch, it's not really that out of balance, but with the 11-inch, it's a little out. But if you put that 15-inch coil on it, I guess that's where you'll really magnify it being kind of nose heavy.
Absolutely. I have the 11-inch coil on here right now, and as you hold the machine, what you can feel is the front end of the machine pushing down. So you're having to kind of put a twisting motion in your wrist to kind of lift that coil. It's not lifting the machine that's a problem. It's that you're having to constantly exert force with your wrist to keep that coil lifted. And so the idea of counterweighting is, back this up so you can see a little bit. The idea of counterweighting is, if this is how your machine sits when you're detecting, and you're having to do all that work with your wrist to lift that coil, with the counterweight on there, it lifts it for you. And so it removes that strain on your wrist. It removes the strain on your forearm. Some people feel it in their elbow, their shoulder. And that's the idea of the counterweighting. Again, thinking of like a teeter-totter, this being the fulcrum. If you put weight back here to counterbalance the coil, it helps you to lift that coil. So you're not having to exert that force with your wrist. And so in an ideal situation, you have enough weight here to where you can just hold that handle with 2 fingers, and it sits naturally in detecting position, the way you want it to sit when you're detecting. So you're not having to exert the force to do that. It sits that way by itself. So that's, if your machine was perfectly balanced, that's the way it would sit all by itself. So you're not having to do the work, and therefore you're not feeling the fatigue and the pain. And like you said, the 6-inch coil, it's a little bit nose heavy, but most people can handle it. But as you move up in coil size, that nose heaviness, that imbalance gets greater and greater. And so the idea is that the counterweight can help you to, that one you have right there, for instance, is a 4.5-inch model. If you have weight in that tube, it's designed, that specific one is designed so that it can reduce either one of your coils, the 11-inch or the 12x15. It can reduce the imbalance back to where the machine was when you had the 6-inch coil attached. In other words, it gives it 6-inch coil balance no matter which one of the coils you have on there. You just pull the small weight bag out, leave the bigger one in. That makes your 11-inch coil balance to the same degree as what your 6-inch coil is. If you put the 4-ounce bag in on top, that does the same thing for your 12x15. It makes it balanced the same way your 6-inch coil is. So in other words, you can swing with the ease of a 6-inch coil no matter which size of coil you're using. And if you have the larger counterweight, which is this one here, this one actually does the same thing, but it gives you perfect balance. It can give you your machine's perfectly balanced no matter which coil you have, just again by adding and removing bags. And I explain that to the customers when they buy one. But you can either aim for perfect balance or what I call 6-inch coil balance, which is what your 4.5-inch counterweight does. Most people, the 4.5 inch is enough. Most people, like you said, when they swing that 6-inch coil, they don't have any trouble. It's pretty easy for them.
Right.
But for the folks that want perfect balance, and there are some, because it really is, it's a neat feeling when your machine, you just hold it in your hand and it sits where it's supposed to, and you don't have to do anything. Some people really like that perfect balance, and that's what the larger counterweight will give you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, we do have a question from YouTube. They want to know, can you do the counterbalance for other detectors other than the Equinox?
The concept is, yes, you could. The issue is the only shaft right now that I usually make as a complete shaft is an Equinox, the Excalibur. But if you're using an Excalibur and you're using a Florida shaft, the Excalibur control box and battery pod acts as your counterweight. So that kind of takes care of that. And those are the only two. I make a few Sovereign shafts, but those are usually for hip mounting. But you can put a counterweight on that. A lot of the other shafts I make are just lower rods or maybe 2-piece lower shafts, like on a Garrett unit. I make the 2-piece lower rod. So I can't really add a counterweight to the Garrett shaft because you use your Garrett upper S shaft. And I would have to put a fitting into the butt end of the shaft so that counterweight would attach. But I am prototyping right now upper S shafts. So those will be coming here at some point in the not too distant future. And when they do, then yes, you'll be able to add a counterweight to a Garrett shaft, or
say Fisher and Nocta Macro and that kind of thing.
Now Nocta's a difficult one, and the same thing with the Deus. And I think somebody asked this question. I saw it in one of the things you guys put out for people to ask questions ahead of time. The Deus and the Nocta Macro use non-round tubes on their shafts. And so that's a different animal for as far as building a shaft, because the way a carbon fiber tube is produced, it's easy to produce a round tube. All companies produce round tubes readily, but to build a non-round tube, you actually have to buy a mold. They use them with molds, and so there's that upfront investment in buying a mold, and so that makes it more difficult as far as building a shaft for those machines.
Now, I saw on yours you had something that wasn't the stock arm cuff. Are you making an arm cuff for these?
Yeah, I mentioned Jeff Herkey's name earlier. Jeff has been making arm cuffs for detectors for years. I had one on my old Explorer. He had arm cuffs available for the Explorer. He has them for a number of models, and he builds them for the Equinox shafts as well now. So I carry those through my website. Jeff's Herkey arm cuffs. It's a nice cuff. It's a black powder coated aluminum cuff. This one here, I have the optional padded neoprene cover on it, but it's a nice heavy duty aluminum cuff that he sells. One of the nice things about them is because they're aluminum, you can sort of squeeze it and bend it just a little bit to get it to fit, your forearm just the way you want it to. So I do have those available, and I can build they're designed for the Equinox shaft, but they can be used with some other shafts that I make as well.
Yeah, I think I might have one. I was going to say I might have one of those on my E-Track.
Yeah, you probably do.
Yeah.
From Tom Becker wants to know if the counterweight is waterproof. Okay to take it in the water?
Yeah, it's fine to take it in the water. As far as waterproof goes, I presume water could probably get in that cap. I don't put a gasket or anything on it to keep the water out, but it wouldn't hurt anything if water got into it. So yeah, I have lots of people that use them. Now, the one thing I will say is this: when you're in the water, the equation changes in terms of how much counterweight you would need, because the coil is partially buoyant. So the coil wants to float just a little bit in the water to begin with. So if you are going to use one in the water, you won't need as much counterweight as you need on the land. It's something you can experiment with, and that is one thing I should say. There's a cap on the counterweight, and so just by unscrewing that cap, all you have to do is unscrew that, and then inside there's these little bags of lead shot. And so taking one out, that's all there is to it. And so if you're in the water and you're not sure how much counterweight to use, there's no reason you can't just take the cap off, take some of the weight out, and see how it feels, and find where it feels balanced to you. Yeah, there you go.
Very
Just
cool.
did it. Yeah, just checking it out. All righty. So we had a question. Allison Walker was asking about uh, the arm cuff. Now she's up in Canada. Do you ship to Canada?
Yeah, yeah, I can ship to Canada. Actually,
Because I don't do that. So I'm going to tell her to go to Steve's Detector Shafts and get that. But
sounds good.
yeah, she's in Canada and I don't ship out of the country.
We
Yeah,
already both know what question she's got too.
Oh
what's
yeah,
that?
she wants to know if you have I think that's on my sheet here. If you have a pink camo.
I do not have pink camo. I do have pink.
Well, pink's close
There
enough.
you go, Allie, right there, dude.
Pink is
You
it.
got the pink.
So she can
So I
get
got
the
you
arm
covered,
cuff,
at least as far as
the
pink
weighted
goes.
shaft, and the pink shaft. And she could paint the weighted one pink if she wanted.
That's
to.
right.
There you go. All righty. Let me keep going down my list here. So, what other detectors do you manufacture those for? The detector
Let me
shaft.
see. So I build two-piece lower shafts for the Garrett series. I think almost all the Garrett machines at this point use the same shaft. So your AT Pro, your AT Max, AT Gold, Apex, all the Ace series, the C100 too. I think almost all the Garrett machines use that same shaft. And it's a two-piece lower, which connects directly to your Garrett upper shaft. But like I said, I'm working on building an upper shaft for it as well. I just don't have those out yet. But so Garrett, all the Garrett machines, two-piece lower. I do a two-piece lower for the Tarsace, the MDT 8000. And again, on these shafts, I can change the lengths. I can make the lower rods longer or shorter when people need that. And one of the things I'll mention about the Tarsace shaft is the reason I do that one. The MDT 8000 has a really nice carbon fiber lower or shaft. You guys have probably seen it. It's really nice. But the reason I do those is there are a few people who wanted them to be longer than what the stock shaft permits. And so I do longer ones. But the other thing is my two-piece lower is thinner in diameter than the stock. That's one of the other changes I made. So therefore, guys that use them in the water, you get a little bit less hydrodynamic drag. It's easier to swing it in the water because the shaft diameters are smaller. So if that's something that would appeal to somebody, that's one other thing I can note. But anyway, I do Excalibur shafts. I can do a hip mount shaft or a Florida style shaft where the control box sits behind the elbow. I can do a Sovereign hip mount shaft. I do CTX 3030 lower rods. I can do lower rods for the GPX series, the 4500, the 4800, and the 5000. I just started doing them for the GPX 6000. That's lower rods only. And I've done a few other ones. It just depends. When I get a customer that says, "Hey, can you do this?" If it's something that has a round shaft, I usually will try it for them. So I've made a couple of Fisher shafts. I've made a couple of CZ shafts for guys.
Is the CTX lower shaft, is that the same diameter as the stock lower shaft?
Yeah, the CTX one is. And I can do those in tall man shafts as well, longer length if you need it. So again, pretty much any of those. And the other thing I should mention is I can also do three-piece shafts for the Equinox. The standard is a two-piece with the longer 35.5-inch upper, but a lot of people want to travel with them. So I do a three-piece shaft for the Equinox as well. So I try to do whatever people need. And if it's within the realm of possibility, I'm always happy to do a custom shaft for somebody.
Yeah,
So
I
the
wish
best,
that.
the best thing is to call and talk to you about it, and you'll either say, "Yeah, I'll take a crack at it," or you can't do it, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, send me an email and we'll talk about it and see what we can do.
Yeah, I was thinking that CTX shaft, it would be nicer if that one was thinner than what it is. That's tough to push through the water.
Yeah, it's a large diameter shaft. The only problem with it is, and one of the reasons it would make it hard to do that is because the way the design is, where the coil cable runs up through the shaft, it has to be fat enough to let the coil cable through. So you're kind of limited there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a bummer because that is an awesome underwater detector or shallow water hunting, and that it's hard to push that thick barrel through the water. It just makes it tough.
It's a big fat one.
Yeah, it is. All righty. Well, let me just keep going down my list of questions. Oh, what other products do you have on the drawing boards right now?
I mentioned the S shafts. That's what I've been focused on the most right now is those S shafts. I'm trying to get a good prototype of a so that I can build complete shafts for a larger number of machines. That's the main thing on the drawing board at the moment. The other thing is, I keep trying to expand the number of brands of scoop handles that I build for. Right now, I'm doing those for T-Rex, Stealth, Extreme. I've done some for Cube scoops. But lately, I've been getting people asking about staver scoops, if I have handles for those, and that takes a different size than any of the ones I mentioned. So I'm working on one for to fit a staver scoop. Um,
Yes.
and let's see if I have anything else.
We'll talk about the scoop handles. I stock them in the shop for the uh, Stealth and also for the T-Rex. Now, when you put these together, do you glue this end piece on there?
I did not used to because I wanted people to be able to replace them if they needed to without having to cut it off. But then I decided, you know what, they move around too much. So I have been epoxying them on there lately.
Yeah, well, that creates a problem for me because we pull them off.
Is
when
that
we
right?
yes, when we drive the scoop on. You just got to be Hercules to get it to come off. But I noticed for the T-Rex, you sand the end of it,
Uh-huh.
which fits in there pretty good. But we still put some liquid detergent on it, put the scoop on it, and drive it on the concrete to drive it in.
Gotcha.
And that's why we like that end piece to come off, because if you pound on this on the concrete, it'll cut a circle around here. And then
Funny thing, I just before I went on the air had a customer tell me he did that exact thing. He said I was trying to get it into the scoop and I whacked it on the ground without thinking, and sure enough, put a little cut in his handle. So I had to send him a new PVC
yes,
grip.
so that's why I learned, because I've done that for years. The first time I cut one, and then after that I pulled them off and drove it on that way, because you're not going to break that carbon fiber
No.
smacking it on the concrete sidewalk to get the scoop in there.
No. Well, that's
And
good to know. Me being not a beach hunter, that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Maybe I'll not epoxy those on there.
yeah, because it just makes it easier for us to pull them off. I mean, Joe and I, we just pull a Hercules act and pull it off of there. If you got epoxy, a lot of times it's just a little epoxy. It comes off
Yeah.
pretty easy. But
Yeah.
that's
I
how
don't
we
put a
put
lot
them
on.
on, of course. And with the Stealth, it's not an issue because they'll go on real easy because they've got that wider. You're bolting it down in two
Yep.
spots,
Yep.
so it's not as big of an issue. But
Those
yeah,
ones with the solid sleeves. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah. So that was just a question I had on that. How you doing over there, Jeff?
I'm doing good. I'm
Okay.
doing good.
Bottom question, I don't get it.
Okay. Let's see.
I don't get it.
Oh, Gary Kerr wanted to know if you is the Garrett Sea Hunter. You do a shaft for them, right? The Sea Hunter too.
Yep, I just sold one the other day for a Sea Hunter. I was not aware of that model. Somebody asked if I could build one and looked, and sure enough, it's the same shaft that's used by the other Garrett machine. So yeah, I can do one for a Sea Hunter, no problem.
Okay, there you go, Gary.
All right, I've got a question here, and I don't quite understand it, but maybe you will, Steve. It's from Chris Davis, and he's saying, "Hey, Steve, has the park produced any more counterfeit walkers?" So you might have to expand on that one.
Yeah, Chris lives in Tennessee, and I sold him a shaft a couple of years ago, and for whatever reason, I can't remember the reason, but he was coming out here to Oklahoma to visit, and got a hold of me and said, "Hey, why don't we hook up?" And I said, "Sure." So we went out to an old Boy Scout park. I think that's what it's called, Boy Scout Park there in Oklahoma, and we went there, and one of the strange targets I dug was a Walker $50 counterfeit. It was the same size as a Walking Liberty $50, but I don't know what it was made out of. It didn't even look silver. It was a real dark color, but we dug that thing up, and I'm scrubbing it and looking at it, saying, "What in the world do I have here?" Turns out it was a counterfeit Walking $50. So that's what he's referring to. No, I haven't dug another one. I hadn't been back there actually since you and I went. I'll have to go back and see if I can find another one.
Okay, and then on my question sheet, if Finders Keepers said, I've dug with Steve quite a few times, and he's a skilled detectorist. He just had to say that. So
Yeah,
he
he's a good
must
guy.
know you.
He lives up there in Pennsylvania. When I go back and visit family, we've gotten together a number of times and had a lot of fun. So
And then on the same sheet, metal detecting with CZ Kid says, any upcoming shaft for the Deus, or he says, I run a Knox as well. That shaft has not become wobbly yet.
yeah, sometimes they will. That's one of the reasons people like the carbon fiber shafts is when the stock shaft wears a little bit. Sometimes the tolerances wear, gets a little wobbly. Carbon fiber shaft takes care of that, so that's one of the nice things about it. But as far as the Deus shaft goes, I have not. I think I mentioned earlier, because it doesn't use that round tube, it makes it a more difficult proposition. You have to have a cam lock to fit a non-round tube. You have to have a mold for the producers to produce a non-round tube. So it's just a more difficult, and it takes a lot of financial investment up front. So I've kind of, one of the things I wondered about the Deus is that a lot of people like the Deus shaft. I wouldn't have thought that there would have been a great market for people wanting to have an aftermarket replacement for it to justify the upfront investment. But if it's something that people want, and I also found out, and I didn't know this, but I had somebody tell me that a Deus shaft fits in a Nocta Macro machine and vice versa.
That I don't know.
So if that's the case, it would be a case of where I could produce for both machines if people wanted me to do that. It's something to look into. But anyway,
that would make it nice that you could produce them for
yeah.
both. You know, and we're talking about the cam locks, and I'm looking at yours on here.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that style?
You know, when I started thinking about building a complete shaft for the Equinox, I kind of looked at the machine. I was swinging it for a while, and I looked at the things on it that I didn't like, that I thought I could improve on. And one of them was the fact that the shaft is one of the ones that uses buttonholes. And I'll talk about the buttonholes for a minute. I can't stand buttonholes. I got spoiled, I guess, in using an Explorer for so many years, where there's no buttonholes on that shaft. It just uses a clamp type cam lock. And then the same thing with the CTX. It doesn't use the buttonholes. So I got so used to using machines without buttonholes and how much easier they adjust, how much easier it is to remove a lower rod when you're not fiddling with the buttons. And so when I got that Equinox, that's one of the things I didn't like. And I looked at the shaft and thought, what makes these buttonholes necessary? Why do we? And the answer to that is the cam lock. If you look at a twist lock, if you take a shaft in your hands like this with your twist lock here, and you don't lock it into a buttonhole, keep the shaft between buttonholes. When you tighten down that twist lock, you can twist these pieces. I mean, the cam lock is not strong enough to keep it from twisting. So therefore, that's why you need the button and buttonhole design, a button in your lower rod, the holes in the middle shaft for it to fit in. It's kind of a secondary or a supplemental attachment system so that your pieces can't spin. But I knew that if you used a better, more heavy-duty cam lock, you could then eliminate the need for those buttonholes like an Explorer does or like the CTX does. And so in this case, with my cam lock, I wanted a design where it was not only heavy duty, but also allows you to adjust via this thumb screw just how tightly that cam lock clamps onto your lower rod. So if you're using my shaft and your coil moves, you bump a tree or something and it twists a little bit. What that means is you didn't have your clamping tension adjusted tight enough. So just give this screw a quarter turn tighter, and that changes the tension with which your clamp closes, and that determines how tightly it holds the lower rod. So the point is, I knew I wanted a cam lock that had that kind of a system. It had a clamp type system and would allow you to adjust the clamping tension so that we could eliminate those buttonholes and not ever have to worry about the lower rod turning. So I looked at every kind of cam lock that I could find to see what type of design I thought would work the best. And I found one that was similar to this one, and it seemed to meet all of the needs I had. So I went ahead and drew up a design that was similar, but made it to where it would fit the shaft that I wanted to make, and that's kind of where that came from. And that's probably what I spent the most time on, because a good shaft, the foundation of a good shaft is the cam lock. So I spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks researching cam locks to figure out how I wanted to design the one for the machine.
Yeah,
And that's the cam lock I use on all the shafts that I make.
Yeah, I would say this is the best cam lock I've seen.
Well, thank you.
That doesn't have that push pin in there. So that's
Okay.
that's great. It's very strong.
We got a question from YouTube from Shannon Bortner, wants to know if you make the colored shafts in carbon fiber.
Yes, they are carbon fiber.
That's what
I have a
this
whole bunch of colors here.
Yeah, show some colors if you can, Steve.
It's
Obviously, you
probably
got
going to be
blue.
hard to completely see them, but there's a bunch of colors that I make. I've got green, red, black, green, black here. I've got orange, blue, black, silver, blue,
Here's a question.
red, purple, pink, and this gold one here. That's the colors that are most common. And what I will say about asking about whether those are carbon fiber, the way you make a carbon fiber shaft is, just to give a little bit of background so people kind of can understand how it works. Carbon fiber is actually sheets. It's sheets of fabric that is what the raw material is. And they take these sheets of fabric, and when you make a tube like this, it's called a roll wrap tube. You take a metal dowel rod, for lack of a better word, of the size that you want the inner diameter of the shaft to be. You get a dowel rod of that diameter, and then you dip that carbon fiber cloth into an epoxy, and you start rolling it, and you roll it, and you roll it, and you roll it, and you roll it until you get to the diameter that you want. And then to make a colored shaft, that very last layer, the last wrap you put on there, you can do pretty much anything you want with it. This blue black shaft right here, what they do for the blue black is that last layer. I actually think the blue fibers in there are Kevlar, but that very last thin wrap of cloth, they put a blue black fabric cloth and wrap that. So that's how you get your appearance. On the painted ones, this type of painted one, this orange one, which is opaque, all they do with this one is they paint it. I think they basically airbrush the last layer of carbon fiber, and then they put the glossy coating on over the top of that. For these other ones, where like this green one, where you can kind of see the pattern underneath, that twill pattern, the last layer of this tube is actually a white cloth that then allows them to apply a transparent paint. And that's how you get some of these transparent solid colors, that like this green or the blue color that you mentioned earlier. That's how you get these ones. So it's all in that last layer. But so to answer the question about the carbon fiber, yeah, these are all carbon fiber. If you look at it from the end, it's carbon fiber wrapped until that last layer. And then that's where you can do the fancy stuff with that last layer, depending on what you want with it. One of the shafts I forgot to bring is a camouflage one that I have. And again, that's a wrap of a camouflage fabric. It's the last roll on the tube is that camouflage pattern. And then those all those colors or paints or whatever are underneath the last step, which is the clear coat.
Yeah, and those are all really cool colors. So that's neat. I have a question here from Allison on Facebook, and it's Jocelyn just handed to me. Does switching to Steve's rod affect a 3-year warranty if the control box fails in the water? And I'll take a stab at that, and then you can tell me what you think, Steve. Well, MineLab, for one, isn't going to know what shaft you had on it, because if it fails in the water, you're going to send it into them. And then you can answer it, Steve.
Yeah, there's no reason. Let me back up and say, on the Equinox, the waterproofing doesn't occur at the interface between the shaft and the control box. If you take the screws out of the bottom and take your control box off, what you find out is this part of the handle is hollow. That's not where the waterproofing occurs. There's no gasket here to keep the water sealed. So taking this apart to put a new shaft on it doesn't break the seal. It doesn't affect the waterproofing in any way. The waterproofing is actually farther up inside the handle where the battery compartment is. So therefore, changing the shaft out and putting an aftermarket shaft on doesn't affect your waterproofing at all. Now, if MineLab wanted to say, nope, we're not going to warranty it, I guess they could choose to do that. I don't know why they would, because it doesn't affect the waterproofing.
Right. Well,
And I've got,
you're not going to,
go ahead.
not to interrupt you, Steve, but when you have to send your detector in, you're going to take it off of the rod to send it in. So
Yeah.
they're not going to see what rod you had it on to start with.
Yeah,
So,
and the carbon fiber shafts for these, so many people are using them, and I've had lots of customers who have had their control box issues and sent it in, and it's never been an issue before. So I don't know why it would be.
no, I don't think it will. It does. It's unrelated. They just sell so many of them, and there's a certain really low percentage of them that could leak. Although it seems like it's more than that, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, it seems like it, but it wouldn't have anything to do with it because it's like Phil
Not with the
says.
shaft.
I've had 3 of them go down, and you just send the control box in. They don't know. Now, if you have the coiler snap off and you know, that's something else. But I don't think there'll be any problem with that at all. And I tell you, Steve, looking at the chat in here, people are going to be going crazy for camo. So you can call Phil. He'll get your camo rods
Get
for
some
you, or call
camos in.
Steve. But call Phil first.
There you go.
Absolutely. Oh, and I was going to ask you too, Steve, about the washers you have on the bottom. Is
Yeah.
that a replacement part that we can stock in the store?
Sure. They're not common enough that you can just go to Home Depot or whatever and get a set, but you can get them on on Amazon or on eBay. If you knew the size, if you need them in bulk, but if you just need a replacement set or whatever, yeah, I can send you replacement ones. I can send out replacement ones. For everybody's information, they're 19 by 10 by 3 millimeter washers. They're 3 millimeters thick. The hole's 10 millimeters. The outer diameter is 19 millimeters. So if you need a set, if you want to have a batch available and you want to buy them, you can get them from me. Phil, I can send them to you, and you can find them on Amazon. That was one of the reasons I used the round ones, so that they weren't proprietary to where you had to get them from.
Right.
From
Like
mine.
the teardrop washers, yeah, that got to come from Mine Lab. All right. Well, cool. So it looks like, let's see here. Let me keep going on my list of questions. And then, Jocelyn, did you have any more coming through? Okay.
I don't have
Um,
anything.
Let me keep going down. Well, let's talk about your location. Now, you said you're in Oklahoma. You
Yep.
originally were from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I originally grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I lived there until I went to college, and then once I graduated and got my degree, I moved around a little bit and ended up in Oklahoma here.
Okay. Now, you're not
I've been
right.
here for. Go ahead.
I say you're not around any of the tornadoes or something that went through the central part of the state, are you?
No, wasn't too close to those ones. Although we've had more than our share of the same type of thing here. That was quite an event, wasn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
that leads me to something that I want to say. We've all been watching the news about all the terrible tornadoes, and I was thinking of a way that the metal detecting community could give back a little bit. And this is what I've come up with is down the road after, they get some of the debris cleaned up. It might be good if people want to do a little give back because tornadoes just scatter all their possessions all over. And maybe, a few teams of people could go up in those areas that have been hit hardest and just, ask people if they can help find some of their valuable possessions. It'd be
That's
a
an
good
interesting
outing, a good
idea.
hunt, and you're giving stuff back and you're, promoting the hobby. So I thought maybe that's something that could be done if anybody really wanted to do it.
Yeah,
And there'd be a lot of different areas for that.
Yeah, that is a good idea. I've seen, I've watched years ago, I watched something very similar. The folks out in California have those fires and their house is just gone and they were looking for their wedding rings and stuff like that. And guys with metal detectors were out there helping them find it. So,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, that would be a neat thing for someone to do. Absolutely. So it looks like
That's a great idea.
Jeff is getting ready to pull a name on there, but
What are you doing?
yeah, what are we doing tonight, Jeff?
Well, we have got a 3-pronged giveaway tonight. The grand prize giveaway is for the lucky person that wins it is Steve is going to make you a custom shaft or a scoop handle, either or if he can for you. And then we're going to have 2 lucky winners of a wonderful Steve's Detector Rod hat and shirt. So I've got all the names drawn, and here's what happens, as it does every week. Everybody had to enter on Facebook and on YouTube. And the phrase that you had to use was "go for the gold" with Steve's Detector Rods. Okay, so I compiled all the names from Facebook, all the Facebook areas and YouTube's, and entered into a random name picker, and I've got the names. There was well over 200 entries. So here's the deal. What you have to do, you'll see the numbers scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Okay, there's Phil's number and there's my number. You can either text or Facebook Messenger with your name, such as Phil Myers, I'm here. Facebook Messenger or text within 3 minutes of having your name called. Then what you must do, and the only way you're going to get your prize, is you must email all your info, your name, address, phone number, all that to treasuretalkshow@gmail.com. I'll put that up, and that's how you're going to get your prize. So let me see if I can find that. Here we go. Okay, there's the email. That's what you have to do. I'm not going to accept your info in a text or a messenger. It's got to be email. That's the only way you'll get your prize. So get your fingers ready, people. And for the grand prize, the detector rod from Steve's, and that is Teresa the Treasure Hunter. If you are here, you won that. Now, for a cap and a hat. Okay, Jim Bujanowski, you're a winner, and Allison Walker, you are a winner. You got 3 minutes to text or Facebook Messenger us. So get after it.
All righty, and I was looking at the Facebook feed, and somebody just, I don't know who that was, but it went too quick for me. Darn it. I'll have to try to figure that out. But I was just reading, Nelson said, and I couldn't get his last name because that disappeared. This Facebook is just too weird for me. It went too fast, but he said that your cam lock works great because he uses it. And Jeff and I hunt in the water a lot, so I'm always worried about that cam lock, and it just feels super secure there. So it looks like I had gotten a text, Jeff, from Allison Walker. Was
okay, Pink Power Alley, she's good.
She won something? Okay, great. That's who it was. So that was one of the winners.
Yep. And the other was Teresa the Treasure Hunter for the shaft. She's got about 2 minutes left. And then Tom Bujanowski won a hat and a shirt.
And did he give you the okay yet?
Nope. So they have to be tuned in to win. So they may not be tuned in tonight. So I've got backup names.
Okay,
right. I'm always prepared.
Oh, awesome. All right, Steve. So let's talk a little bit about your detecting career. So you're in Oklahoma now. What's the oldest coin you found out there?
In Oklahoma, the oldest coin.
Well, you can talk about Pennsylvania too.
Pennsylvania, oldest coin I found was an 1830 bust dime that I was lucky enough to find in an old church that's long gone. All that's left is a small cemetery to let you know that there was a church around. But I did some research and found out that 50 yards or so behind the cemetery in the woods was an old church that was built in 1850 and burned down about 1900, and that was the end of that. But found quite a few good coins back there, a couple of half dimes, but that 1830 bust dime is the oldest silver coin I found in Pennsylvania. And I'm trying to think, I think the oldest large cent I found in Pennsylvania is 1812, I believe. And then here in Oklahoma, it's a newer state, but somehow, I don't know how I managed it, but found an 1831 5 franc coin. It's a big coin. It's bigger than a $50, about the size of a silver dollar. Found it on an old farm. So I don't know if the farmer was carrying it around. There was some obviously, French explorers and things through the area. I guess it's possible that it got dropped during some exploring expedition, but more than likely it was the old farmer that carried it around. And So that's the oldest one I found here.
What part of Pennsylvania were you in?
Oh, about 30 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. So kind of close to the Ohio, kind of where the Ohio River flows into Pennsylvania, right there where West Virginia and Ohio and Pennsylvania all meet. That's where I grew up.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we got to announce another winner. Teresa the Treasure Hunter and Jim Bujanowski were not, they missed their chance. So Charles Broussard, if you are watching, you won the Detector rod. And Gary, the Cactus Man Toledo, you
Gary.
have won a cap and a shirt.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
Yeah, I haven't seen Gary in a while. He used to live here in Tampa. He moved out to Arizona, so I miss Gary, and I didn't see him on there tonight. So
Well, I thought he was on earlier. Now he may have had to check out. I don't know.
it.
So, Steve, have you found a gold coin?
No, you would have heard me yelling if I had. That's on the bucket list, but no, haven't found one yet.
All right, that's on my bucket list too. So
Either of you guys found one?
No,
Yeah.
no. We found plenty of silver coins and whatnot, but no gold coin.
We
That's
got
on
a
my-
question
I would
from
love-
YouTube. The Mumbles Man wants to know if you make a travel shaft for a travel scoop handle.
I have made a few scoop handles, travel scoop handles. Yeah, 2-piece handles. I have made a few. I think I may have one in stock, but I can always make additional ones. I just have to order the fittings, the threaded fittings that fit between the two. But yeah, they're unscrewable. You know, you twist them to break them down. Yeah, I do.
Awesome. Yeah, so we haven't found any gold coins either. Although I did find a gold coin that a customer brought in the shop. I have to tell you this. He had lost it. He brought it in to test a detector, and then he calls me the next day or a few hours later and says he lost the coin. He couldn't find it because I looked in the parking lot and wasn't there. But then he drove back, and I looked in his car. He had a vintage Jaguar, and it was in between the seats. So I found
my
a gold coin.
goodness. There you go. You found a gold coin. Hey, I found my own wedding ring.
Oh, well, that's good. Absolutely.
Yeah. I lost it and thought I was in big trouble, and I managed to go out with a machine and find it. So
Oh, that's perfect. That's classic.
Okay, we got to go on with the new winners. So we have got for a cap, we're going to have Adele Rutherford,
Oh,
and
no.
for the shaft, we will have Gary Lynn.
I haven't seen her.
Okay. Well, she's
You
got
got till 656.
Adele Rutherford and who?
and who was the second name, Jeff? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Gary Lynn.
Gary Lynn.
I haven't seen her.
And folks, if you
Okay, whoever it is has got the phone number 412-855-6794. You're here, but who are you?
yeah, please text your name or email your
You
name.
gotta text your name.
Yes. And friends, when you're buying a Steve
Oh, Gary Lynn. Okay,
from
good.
your detector shaft, we always put these in for Christmas. We still do our wall calendar, so I've got them finally in stock, and we're shipping them out with every order. Or if you wanted just a calendar, didn't want to buy something from me, which I don't know why you would be that way, but if you didn't want it and just wanted the calendar, you can get it off my website. I've got it there for, I think it's $4.95 to ship it to you. So just a heads
Okay.
up on that. So do we have our winners, Jeff?
We have all of our winners. Adele just texted, Gary Lynn just texted, and Allison Walker texted. But now you guys, you got to send the email. Otherwise, you're not going to get your goodies. So I will forward the emails to you with all their info, Steve. So that way there's no mistakes, you know,
sounds
because I
good.
sometimes, two-finger typing does not work as good for me as at other times.
Understood.
All right, well, let me keep going down my list of questions because it looks like we don't have much time left. So what is the most unusual find you found metal detecting, Steve?
Besides my own wedding ring.
No, that's
Let me
cool.
see.
That's not
Let me
unusual.
think about
That
that
was
one.
lifesaver.
Yeah,
What else
that's right. Most unusual. I would say probably, aside from some interesting trash, I would say probably um, it was a hunting in an old fort. This is a little bit gruesome. Hunting in an old fort site. Where we were digging up lead bullets and stuff. Found one of those bullets with teeth marks in it, and everybody knows what that means. That's a not pleasant experience to have to think the old bite the bullet word, but we found a bullet with teeth marks in it, so that was probably my most unusual.
Okay, that's cool. And I got a question from William Jones, and he's asking me if I carry the camo shaft. And William, I don't have it in the shop right now, but imagine I'm going to have it pretty quick because camo seems to be the most. You've got them in stock now, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be ordering some of the camo color for sure.
Sounds good.
Because people love camo. I don't know why. I did a big hunt in dig with DIV digging in Virginia. And I
Yep.
think I was the only guy, of course I'm from Florida, but I'm the only guy there who wasn't wearing camo. And I was worried that maybe the relics were going to see me coming or something.
That's
That wasn't
right.
camo.
No, but what he didn't tell you is, see, Phil's an old hippie, so he had on tie-dye.
Oh, gotcha. Well,
There was no tie-dye. It just
I understand the camo. I'm guilty myself here, so
so when we're on the beach, we're not wearing camo, I guess.
no, I wouldn't think so.
So, all right. And have you found? You mentioned you were hunting a fort site. Have you found many military artifacts?
Yeah, you know what? When we had access to that site, it's an old site that was built in 1850, an old fort, and it's now just an old farm ranch here in Oklahoma. And a friend of mine we had permission to hunt that site, and we found so many interesting things there. Aside from old coins, I mean, there were bullets and buttons, and I don't know if anybody who's a Civil War relic hunter probably knows about epaulettes. The metal pieces, the decorative pieces on the shoulders. We found.
Right.
I think somebody found either a bugle or a cannon that fit on the hat. That tells you.
Yeah.
I don't know that there were any buckles found that I can think of, but just all sorts of buttons and bullets and uniform part. It was just amazing.
Yeah, that's how Tampa at one time was Fort Brooke. So I was fortunate over the years to be able to do a lot of hunting in downtown Tampa before they built on everything, and
Right.
I got a nice collection of military artifacts from the 1820s to the 1870s time
Oh
period.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a lot of fun. Every once in a while, a street or a sidewalk will be torn out, and if you're fortunate enough to get on it, you'll find some cool stuff. But it's
Yeah,
just
that's really. There's not a lot of there's very little Civil War activity in Oklahoma to speak of. Just wasn't an area where there was much that went on. So hunting, the ability to hunt a fort like that was really special. You don't get to do a lot of military relic hunting here.
yeah. Now, do you do any water hunting there?
I have
Lakes?
never. The only water hunting I've ever done was on a vacation to Destin several years ago. I took a machine and did a bit of beach hunting there, but that's something. It takes some knowledge to know how to read a beach and know where to spend your time looking for things. That's a whole nother type of detecting. That's not, you just can't just go out there and think you're going to swing your machine and find a gold ring. I mean, I guess you can, but there's so much to it. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's just learning, different style of hunting.
Yep.
And Jeff and I both enjoy it. It's less taxing on your body when you're in the water because it's holding you up. So.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I'd love to go back and do it again, but we're a little landlocked here, so unless you're going to the local lake.
The next time you go to Destin, just hit me up and I'll meet you over there.
Sounds good. I'll do it. That's where my wife likes to go, so I'm sure we'll be back.
Good. Good. Yeah, great.
The beach is beautiful there. The sand is real light and it's a little different than down here, but it's beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
Well,
is.
Jeff, I think we're getting close to that time, aren't we?
We are at the time, so everybody needs to remember next week it's our big Christmas extravaganza show. So if you have not registered for any of the giveaways, if you're not a member on Treasure Talk YouTube, you need to make sure that you are, so you have a chance to win, because we're giving away a Fisher backpack, a Fisher water bottle, a Fisher hand digger. We're giving away a grand prize of a Fisher F75 and a 50% off coupon as a second grand prize.
Yes.
Plus, Pacific Northwest Dirt Fishing just called me and said they want to give away a couple of their custom-made T-shirts too. So there's going to be a lot of giveaways. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff going on next week on Treasure Talk, and make sure you tune in Thursday night for Treasure Tales. We got Teresa the Treasure Hunter, we got Gypsy, and we got Dan and Laura Chumley to come in and chat with us and tell some of their treasure tales. So it's festive season, and Phil and I will be here with bells on. I think we'll have something on.
Yes,
so anyway.
Absolutely. So, Steve, thank you for coming on tonight and donating the door prize and answering questions. And we're going to sell a lot of your products as they're well made, and we're stocking them now at the shop. So, folks, if you need some, just holler at me. And if you're up there like Allison is up in Canada, just call Steve direct and he'll ship it to you. But we just ship to the U.S. only, and of course you can walk in the store and pick it up right there. So with that, thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get you on Treasure Tales too, Steve.
And
sounds good. Love to.
You too.
I'll get up with you on that. So, Philip, thank you. Give Jocelyn a big hug for us.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
And tell her thank you for all she does. And Steve, thanks so much for taking time out and spend with us tonight. Everybody loved it. Looking at all the chat comments, and there's going to be a big, huge rush on camo. The Digging Canuck from has got a camo fetish. She's from Ontario, Canada. She swings a Fisher F75, so you may have to do something in camo for her.
Okay, sounds good.
Absolutely.
All righty. All right.
All righty.
Everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. We'll see you guys.
Goodbye.
Bye now.